Welcome to Beachside Tech Talk. Riza, myself, and Malachi are coming to you live from Capitola Village. And we got Dan over in the Aptos Forest, Ted in the Silicon Valley, and Nigel over in the...
Hello.
Hello, Internet Land. We're back with our daily Beachside Tech Talk. We're going to do this for an hour. We don't have the 2-hour radio commitment that we used to have. So we're going to dive in for an hour and talk through some of the cool things happening in the world of technology. We usually focus on Web3, AI, robotics, automation, etc. So we'll touch base on a little bit of that. But also, I haven't seen you guys for a few days. Last time we were live was Thursday. So it's wonderful to be back with you. Ted, how's it going? You got a busy day today. You have a big, very important interview for Innovate. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm going to interview Henry Kestner, the technologist, venture capitalist, Christian leader, founded faith-driven entrepreneur, faith-driven investor, Generosity Bay Area, the faith-driven movement. We're going to catch up. Going to go interview him over at his home in Los Gatos, and I'm really looking forward to that. His latest initiative is solving the world's biggest problems, and I'm eager to hear an update about that. It's really cool. Yeah.
That was a slogan that you've been using for Innovate for the last couple of years. I'm glad to see that
our slogan was completely different. Our slogan was, let's solve the world's biggest challenges.
Okay, I thought it was the same. So good. He has
Very
a big event
similar,
on Friday. Yes. Are you familiar with what he's doing on Friday? He has a big global event, from what I understand.
Yeah, it's right down the street from where I used to live at the Hayes Mansion, and he's bringing investors together and Christian investors together, and it's all about solving the world's biggest problems. So yeah, I'm eager to hear how that's going. What's up with that? And he's been very active. I mean, his passion is for emerging markets right now, and he sees both the opportunity to, develop these emerging markets. He's been in Africa a lot. I know he's doing cool things in Indonesia and in India, but he's very, very bullish on Africa. Yeah. And I think it's wonderful when Christians can get involved, and not just under the old paradigm of, if you're a Christian, you're a missionary and you're going and you're planting churches. I believe in all that. I think that's wonderful. But I think if you can understand, this new paradigm of marketplace ministers, and you don't check your faith at the door Monday through Saturday, and just because you're a venture capitalist as opposed to a missionary doesn't mean you're not in full-time Christian ministry and figuring out how to use that business and that impact to advance God's kingdom and to solve the world's most important problems and to serve the community. And I think it's wonderful and very important if we can, Christians who are driven by Christian values and whose bottom line is not just making money, but is really about uplifting, modeling what Jesus did. There's so much power when we leverage that together. And if we can come in and do missions work through that mindset of holistic, of developing things for Christ's glory, that's what's super excited. So I've been a huge fan of all that Henry's been doing. And, we were part of his group here, Faith-Driven Entrepreneur. And also he has this thing called Inklings. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to the update.
Were you part of that last, what was it that he did put together, Ian, that was in the black box? Or was that not, that wasn't Henry?
That's what he's doing with the National Christian Foundation. It's what he's doing with a couple other partners. And
did you guys see that? Did you watch any of that or partake?
I don't think it happens until, I think it's still a month away. I thought it was early mid-October.
Oh, that still hasn't happened.
Is the faith-driven entrepreneurs this Friday?
Yeah. That's different
Really?
than the thing he sent the box on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Faith-driven entrepreneurs. That's his global conference on that. Yeah, I'm going to a watch party in San Francisco with my friend Matthew Lee on that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's Friday.
that's great.
Looking back through history, do you think that there were people who would have called themselves faith-driven entrepreneurs if they knew that name? Or do you think that's a newer thing?
No, there's many who would have seen that. I mean, I think the apostles would have seen that. Paul was, a manufacturer of housing, of temporary housing. He was a tent maker.
Right.
And that was not a small business. That was, supported him and his team. And I think also, I mean, you look at someone like William Wilberforce, he would have used a different language, but he really saw himself as representing God in the House of Lords. And he, deeply identified as just nothing but a servant of the Lord. Another wonderful example is the Guinness family. We've heard of
Yeah, that's a good story.
the Guinness beer, and
I
half of the
thought you were
family
talking
were
about
in
world records.
Yes, it's the same family.
The
Guinness Book of World Records is the same family as Guinness beers, and initially the World Records was like a book that they distributed in their pubs.
Got it.
And then it grew and became its own thing.
I wonder
but half
if
of
that's
the family.
I was gonna say, I wonder if that's how they started it. If it was, they had the beer in the pubs and just
No, that's exactly how
people in
it
the
started.
pubs are going, check this out, look what I can do.
And it's like,
He's
got the world record.
And it all started right there in the Guinness pubs.
No, that's exactly how it started. There's this really beautiful book called God and Guinness that shares the story about how, the patriarch of it was, the legend goes, I don't know how much this was actually true, but the principle is true, that he was walking through Ireland and was just brokenhearted by the drunkenness, and it was off of whiskey, Irish whiskey primarily.
That's why they need beer.
Yeah, and Guinness beer, like God spoke to him and said, I'm going to give you a recipe for a beer. It's going to be very, very healthy for people, and it's going to become the national drink. And Guinness beer is hard to get drunk on because it's so stout. It's also healthy for you. And it became the national beer and the national drink of Ireland. And it did a lot of work to curb the whole alcoholism. And anyways, they were an example. They wouldn't have used the term faith-driven entrepreneur, but they certainly modeled it. And that was generations ago. And they were so cutting edge. What we think of as, socially sensitive and caring organizations are not even touching what the Guinness family did. They did so much to uplift the poor in their area. And Ireland, Dublin, when they came in at one point, was like Calcutta in the sense that the housing conditions for the average worker were so bad. It was just a shanty town. And Guinness hired this idealistic medical doctor to be like their director of corporate health. And he interviewed 1,500 separate employees in their homes and intensely documented these horrible conditions that they were living under. And then Guinness led the way in rebuilding the housing and bringing in educational programs, like teaching them about hygiene, teaching them about cooking and health and all that. And they made pristine worker housing, and they led the way and inspired the other wealthy workers, business owners to do the same thing. Really, they solved their equivalent, their generation's equivalent of homelessness, and was transformative. It's very, very inspiring. So to answer your question, Malachi, yeah, there's many long history of Christians who would identify as faith-driven entrepreneurs if not by that name.
Yeah.
Want to jump in, Nigel? I see you getting close to the microphone.
Well, that's fascinating information to digest there. Didn't know that. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good history teach there, Ted.
Yeah.
God and Guinness, beautiful
And
book.
I was just being funny, and by coincidence, when I was saying that the Guinness book and the Guinness beer are
No,
somehow
you were being prophetic.
okay.
You saw it. You knew
I like it. I like that. Right on.
That's good, man. I think that anywhere we can take an example, from our father, we could do better in whether it's entrepreneurship or anything else for that matter. Just being kind to one another will probably be helpful. I think sometimes we lose sight of that, and it's not necessarily entirely our fault. How about that?
Right.
I think there's a significant amount of distraction, distortion, obstruction that goes on that we need to be more vigilant about finding, just like this story, ways that we can put our faith first, if you would, seek the kingdom, if you would. So
George Washington Carver. I don't know as much about him, but I do know that all of his work was deeply motivated by his faith. And it was transformative. And he brought the kingdom of God through his science, and transformed agriculture.
I'm constantly so fascinated by the transformation and the evolution of our understanding of science throughout time. The way that now I can open up this piece of metal and glass and other metal, and all of a sudden I have the biggest library that's ever existed. It's only ever going to get bigger, and it has anything I could ever want, so much so that people get bored of looking for things to learn. Then if you look at that in contrary to like what it used to be, where you have to put so much effort to learn, and some people didn't ever even have a chance to learn. It was like very rare. It just feels so wild that I get to live in this time. And I wonder if it's going to be a similar thought process in the future compared to now. Like maybe people are going to have brain implants that don't just receive, but are able to also give in a way that's kind of similar to the Matrix. Like that would be so cool. And then they look back at us now in like the 2000s, and they're like, bro, what were they? They really thought that they had a lot of learning. I mean, now we can just put the thing in and now we have everything. Like, that's such an interesting idea.
I have a question for you, Malachi. I mean, when you think about just the description you gave of, what things used to be versus what they are now and the opportunity that's available and the fact that some people didn't have that opportunity, how much do you think we're dealing with people just not taking advantage of the opportunities they do have? And I'm not talking about the proverbial pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I don't want to conflate that with this. I'm talking about we have access to tools that weren't previously available. And just like you said, endless knowledge. But how much are we using it and for what purpose? And where do you think, our accountability, all of us, and responsibility lie in doing something about it? Not just talking about it, doing. And how do you think you measure that?
I find it so fascinating that people used to think of learning as this far thing that you like, oh my gosh, people in the slavery, like, I'm forgetting the way to say it, but slaves in America, it was like bad if you learned. Like the masters would not want them to learn. And so it was so motivating for them to learn because they weren't allowed to. And because learning is such a human thing, we feel so drawn to it. But then if you go forward in time and you come to now we're forced to learn the complete opposite. And I realized that now it's so common for people, whether it's in school or whether it's in just your day-to-day life, learning is like this thing of, I really don't want to learn. Like, do I have to go to school, Dad? Do I have to go to school? And that's become just such a common thing.
No.
I find it so interesting that people always, not always, people tend to want to do what people are forcing them not to do, which is such an interesting human phenomenon.
What do you think is the balance for that, though? Like, how do you think you manage that and not just take things for granted? Because that's what this is. Like, when you can't do it and you're prevented, there tends to be more of a motivation to do it. It would seem.
I think
But,
it's best to try and remove ourselves from the current culture as frequently as we can in whatever way. Education is just one of the sectors. And when I'm saying that, I mean that it's so easy to be like, gosh, I'm just like kind of scared to be around these kind of people, or whatever thoughts happen because we get so sucked into the culture. And being different is weird, but then when you're different, people want to be around you in a unique way. So it's so weird to be a human. And I think that every time I think about learning and the question you're asking, I want to put myself back in the shoes of someone 2000, 3000, a long time ago, and say, learning was so wanted. So I want it to feel like that for me as well.
That's good. I think if you put that into a prompt and share it out there, it'd be interesting to see who ran it and what kind of feedback you get. Because I think putting things in perspective and experiencing it, even though not the negative effects, but just having a better sense, a more palpable sense of what that would mean, I think will give people perspective. Will give all of us perspective that we might not otherwise have, and hopefully foster some better movement forward.
The perspective shift is so vital.
Cool.
Ted and Danny, I'm curious, what's something that you actually felt that stuck with you from the time that you were learning in school and college? Was there anything that you actually felt like had real value? Or do you think that the common cultural mindset was something that really affected you in a way?
We didn't have too much culture or anything like that when I was in school. It was
pre-culture.
What's that?
You were pre-culture.
There's always culture, though.
There was no getting together. You had a group of friends who you lived by, and that was pretty much it. So that's.
So you're saying the communal life when you were in college, the communal life and the identity of that college wasn't really a thing that you experienced.
I didn't go to college, so
okay.
I'm just saying school. As far as me growing up and learning, school was an institution that you went to, and you learned skills at a basic level to hopefully that you would get out in the world and maybe pick something, maybe go to college, maybe do it that way. It's just when I was in school, there was no technology. The technology was kept for, in my opinion, technology was kept for businesses. Technology was used by businesses. Schools were still paper, pencils, and everything was done analog. The thing I remember about school is, history lessons, learning how to use English, government, math. I learned the basics in school. And schools are great. I think school's great to go to. You go to 12 years of it just before any kind of college or as you're growing up. It's a good way. It's a good place to learn culture. It's a good place to learn where you're fitting in with other people. And that's, I think it's worked for a long time. And that's how, our generation had worked like that. You build network through your schooling, I think, and then enter into a job. But I think the most I took from it is learning. School was a learning process, and it gives you tools to understand that you can learn, whatever you want. Again, when I was younger, we still had libraries. If you wanted to study something or learn something, you could. There was ways for you to find things out. So I think school for me, ultimately, not to drag it out, was a learning place. And yes, I did learn specifics. I don't know if I bring specifics too much into my adult world. Maybe the math, maybe some sciences, but I think the learning how to learn was built in my school days.
That's interesting. That learning how to learn became one of the most vital and important things you went to go to school
Right.
for.
Because if I didn't go to school, I just think there'd be a lot of people out in the world. If you don't do that through those years of your life, you might lose structure,
Yeah.
kind of drifting around or something. But going to an establishment and learning with other people that are just like you, same age, type of thing, fostered a group learning, and that's what I took from school. It was very helpful in my life. I would highly recommend it. And then I think about, like homeschooling. Homeschooling must be great, but then again, where do you develop your social skills when you're homeschooling? And maybe has some of that homeschooling, or does some of that homeschooling lead into, not development of social skills? And then we have people who weren't able to develop socially until an older age, and that maybe that's kind of why people take the social media today such to heart. There was a time for a few years, a decade or two ago, when social media really boomed out, that there's a lot of bullying going on the social media channels for adolescents. That was I remember there was a time there for a couple of years that young people had very hard, difficult time dealing with all of the attention and so many people and bashing and even, back and forth, both, even if it was adulation or bashing, it was hyperactive. So yeah, I'm interested to find out, where the learning generation is going to go from here,
Mhm.
because the public school system, I mean, it seems seems like they'll keep it because it fits so many places. Where else are you going to go? People can't afford to do charter schooling or homeschooling or whatever the case may be. So I think public schooling will always be there, but how robust will it be? How much, are they really being put into it? Is it going to be just for people to get by and hopefully you can make something of yourself out in society, or is it going to be more focus driven? Because it seems like the charters and the homeschooling and the private stuff is really much more focused on having someone come out with as many tools as they can get.
Right.
Ian, you have your kids. You did homeschooling through the COVID and a lot when the kids were growing up, right? You guys did some homeschooling.
We did 1 year of unschool, and so unschool is primarily made for families that travel. It kind of started off as a thing for families that were on the road traveling a lot, and it gave them a chance to basically have their kids teach themselves without having to be tied to any specific curriculum. So unschooling is 3 hours a day minimum, 127 days a year minimum, and the students basically get to teach themselves age appropriate content without the interference or support of a parent or a teacher. For Malachi and Kenny, it was quite effective. Malachi was in 7th grade, Kenny was in 2nd grade, and California held the line on some stuff with schools that we were not aligned with during the pandemic, and we did not see light at the end of the tunnel. So we just thought, well, let's take them out of school for a year and see if things turn the tide before we make a decision on how we want to deal with this. We thought the government was making decisions for our family that we did not, agree with. So we just thought, well, let's just take them out and see what happens. So I think that year was really, really beneficial for the two boys in terms of their education. When they went back to school for 3rd and 8th grade,
affected, though.
it was pretty major, but they did miss friends and connection.
Right.
they learned a lot of cool things. What was your what's your takeaway?
Was that 2020? Was that during COVID, the year of COVID?
Yeah,
I would
20
say that
and
the
20.
main thing that I would take away from it is that looking into the future, I see AI being something that is going to teach people. People are going to be primarily taught by AI, but you have this social part that school, it's something that only really school brings in many kids' lives. I mean, unless you're on sports teams or things like that, but school is the place you go and be social as a kid. And in a way, I will blatantly say we lost that in seventh grade, which there was the plus and benefit. And I'm so glad it happened to me because it taught me the value of learning and many other things. But that social thing definitely is important to speak on. And so I kind of want to just ask you guys all as a whole, what do you think the future is going to look like with AI being something that's going to affect people in the way that they learn, but yet people are still going to want social and people interactions? Is AI going to be something that gives that to them? I don't really
I
know.
think the social part is gonna. I think the social part is going to be the tougher part of the two in the equation, because as we start to understand what we have in front of us, and some of us have the tools and what have you, I think the benchmarks, the yardsticks we measure by are going to be different. Like, for instance, in New York, when I tested into a high school, into one of the specialized schools that were there, and they would evaluate you if you're of the pedigree to go to the particular school. In hindsight, some of that almost I understand what the logic was behind it, but understanding what I know now and seeing where technology has taken us, I just think that having a better program where everybody's prepared to enter, because the preparedness is what it comes down to. And we're seeing this play out in a very spectacular fashion with the job market. People are getting, college degrees, some of them more alleged than others. And there's no practical measure or, value attached to it in a way that I think it could be. Like if you did an apprenticeship, or you were an engineer, or you did something physical, you came out with a skill, an actual skill that can be applied, and you either were good or you weren't. It was very obvious what was good and what wasn't. School, in terms of taking exams and things like that, I don't know that metric is there the way it could be, the way that it should be, actually. I think someone coming out now, probably the most valuable thing that they can take away is the ability to use their critical thinking, because we're practicing to not think. To me, you literally have, marketing designed for it. Let me see how I can attention hack, shift your focus, take you away from what you're doing by design. Like, that's the preparation. I'm preparing you to not focus on what you're supposed to do so that you can focus on this, not give you enough information, and make it seem urgent so that I can get into your wallet. The end. Now, some marketers may say, well, that's kind of a harsh state, but it's not no less true. It's no less true. Versus, if you want someone to understand something, take a parent and a child. My dad was real serious about learning. Give a real life example. So 3 months out of the year, I would leave New York and I would go down to Trinidad for 3 months, and it was like summer school, and parts of me didn't like it, but I just wanted to get the work over with. So I just excelled at doing it so I could get it over with. But net, I never did homework at home ever. It was all done before. I never, ever did homework at home, because I was during the summer, I was working while everybody else was out playing with their friends. I was doing schoolwork. And you do it enough, the reps and sets. But what happens now is we're leaning into things because everybody's saying it. It's loud, it's active, it's all the time. But we're not doing the other things that help us to focus on what's there. It's kind of like you go to the supermarket and you're like, I want to get some red pepper jelly. You know exactly what you're going there for. You walk in the store, you know exactly where it is, but you go down 9 aisles. I think I'll get some chips. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll get some chicken, get some lemon
Yeah.
juice, and before long, you're doing 30 different things. I looked at my phone the other day, like just the app that manages that looks at how much you're doing and like what's going on. 300 notifications. Like that's insane. So now I'm seeing that. I'm like, and this is where metrics become good, but you have to do something with it, just like school. It's great to know that it's there, but if you're not actively practicing, I'm like, that's way too many notifications. Like 300 is way too much.
I only have
I don't need that.
on SMS and FaceTime. I don't have on any social or even other apps like WhatsApp, Telegram. I won't do notifications. It's just it's worse than a distraction.
Mhm.
Honey, you raised 2 adult children,
Mhm.
and of course our son Nathan. What were your thoughts around this topic of school and the pursuit of knowledge? What do you think?
Well, I raised them in the Philippines, which the culture, education is very important. Yeah, diploma is very important because uh, I got my diploma, I got my bachelor's degree, which is really very important in the Philippines because if you don't have that, you cannot have a job. Even though you don't have a job, you have a business, and if they can see that your business is successful, they will still degrade you based from your educational background. So they would say like, well, maybe you became successful because of this, because of that, but the way you communicate with them, like you're talking with them, sometimes they will not like want to talk to you or want to be part of their community, like community of business people. It's because number one, you don't have a degree. And even though you don't, if you, even though you have a degree, they will still like find something like, okay, you have a degree, but which university you graduated, So number one is the university where you graduated. They don't care whether you have failing grades, you had failing grades during your times when you were a student. The most important is that you studied in the top 3 reputable universities. Number 2 is that you are a degree holder, and not only that, you must be like a top student. Like, are you a cum laude, or have you been part of the student government? So there are communities in the universities that you really have to achieve. So me, when I was a student, I really did many things to be part of that community because I was afraid that these people will not recognize me even though I'm a graduate. So I did my best to look for a scholarship just to be just to study the top 3 universities, which I did. And I also did that to my children. So my daughter Julia graduated in one of the top 3 universities, and she's not only like a student there, but she also did her best to be part of the student government. And now she is studying in a law school, and law school also is one of the top 3. So it's really very important in our culture that you must have a university or a diploma, whether you are it's for work or for business or whatever you want to achieve in your life. So there were many like celebrities who didn't graduate college, but they're very, very successful, and still they were bashed. And that's one of the reasons why in our country we have this what we call I already mentioned that to you, right? That you can acquire a diploma, but you don't need to go to school. And
Yeah.
that university,
An honorary degree
yes, it's an honorary, like
based on
okay,
your career or whatnot.
exactly, but you
Or
have
who you
to
know.
pay a lot of money for that. So only
I mean,
wealthy people.
here in America, a lot of famous people get honorary doctorates,
Mhm.
even if they don't have a bachelor's degree, and it's just a school's way of basically hinging their wagon to that person's reputation or whatnot. Not to say it's not earned or deserved in some regard.
Mhm.
You've been a business English teacher for 25 years.
21.
21 years teaching in about 35 countries, oftentimes
Mhm.
global, leaders in business that are trying to master English. So that is a bit of a different environment than traditional education. How do you see things like tutoring online, teaching online, walking through certificate programs online? How do you see that changing right now because of technology? How do you see that? What's the landscape of that? How do you see it changing over the next couple of years?
I don't see any changes of that.
Yeah.
Until now, there are still a lot of students looking for tutors, like real human tutors, like they call it AI, actual individual.
That's funny.
So actual
Of
individual.
course, they had to
teachers.
do that.
So they still need that. I met recently a Brazilian guy. He said he's been studying, Duolingo for like 3 years English. And when I gave him a trial class, he was like, "Wow, I never thought that this would be, different." So I told him like, so I taught him like it depends. It depends on how you actually study, because I know a lot of people who became successful learning from Duolingo. So learning from AI and learning from a real human, it depends on how you actually absorb the lesson or the knowledge. So everything depends on individual.
I find it so fascinating that the culture gave so much power to 3 universities. That's such an interesting thing. Culture gave so much power to 3 universities. How does that happen?
Because these top three universities, the University of the Philippines is called UP, the second one is Ateneo de Manila, and the third is Regular Veteran Religious. These top three universities, they have the top students international, and most of our politicians like president, vice president graduated from that university. That's why they were recognized, highly recognized.
I just posted a question that Nigel put on YouTube. The question is, how are you making the most of the technology that we have available? So I'll answer that first. I'm keeping all my devices charged. And that may seem like a really silly way of answering this question. However, for the 1.5 billion humans in the world that have cell phones, have access to the internet, but can't keep their device charged, they're lucky to have their device charged 5, 10, 20% out of the month. They get it charged, it lasts for half a day, but they can't get access to another plug, or it doesn't charge fast enough. Um, it's like this. To me, it's the simple things that we sometimes forget, that we go through the rhythms. Like we go through the rhythm of plugging our devices in, making sure they're charged, making sure we pay our bill for our cell phone or our internet. And that's how we use the technologies to ensure that we maintain access to it. Another way that I am making the most of technology that we have available is testing new things out and not getting bored. Like not getting bored with ChatGPT, giving Grok a try, not getting bored with Grok and ChatGPT, trying out Google Gemini. It was the same thing when I only used Siri, but then I started using Alexa, and then I added in Google Assistant. Or, maybe I got really used to one social media, but I'm trying to use others. Or StreamYard to broadcast, trying different things. So to me, trying different things with technology helps me get more out of it and helps me kind of stay engaged. So those are my two answers: is keep stuff charged and try different stuff. How about
See
for
a
you,
new good
Nigel?
answer.
You posted the question: how are you making the most of the technology we have available?
I'm definitely challenging what I have available versus what I'm doing with it in a very deliberate and intentional way. I don't think we can do that enough, especially when I'm seeing, particularly with senior. I see how technology can be weaponized against certain groups, and I don't think that necessarily. I think we could do better just by knowing more, and applying what it is you know better, you do better. So you look at information and the value of it and how it helps us to to shape whatever it is we're doing, and for whatever you're using it for. Let's say, you're buying a house or whatever the case may be, you need to understand what goes into that. Now, you can go the Web 2 route and, you got 50,000, articles, but big deal. But, it's where the rubber meets the road in terms of the technology we have available now. You can go so granular. And this is where the accountability comes in. And it's like, for me, I just keep thinking about drinking my own Kool-Aid when it comes to that. What can't I see? Like, it's really hard for someone to tell you something that you necessarily need to take at face value. You can go all the way down the rabbit hole and understand at a pretty granular level in the way that you learn, not just the way someone decides to tell you. And to me, that is a real powerful tool. That's an asset that, we should be leaning into, but I don't know that we always do that. You see the big sign at the bottom that says these answers may be wrong, but how many people pursue it beyond that?
Right.
Like you said, you're using different ones. Like, how many people are comparing what those different ones even say or why they say it? Like, one of the things that I find fascinating is when you get an answer from AI that you don't expect, you ask, well, how'd you come to that conclusion? And it's not just AI. I think we should be asking that to other humans, on anything. Like, you'll have someone berate another human for whatever reason, right? And if you're a believer, and this is going to sound however, but I think that's idiotic. There's no other word for it. God told me I'm great. I'm God's masterpiece. Like, for you to tell me anything different seems ridiculous. The only conclusion I could come to is delusion. You're delusional. Like, how did you come to that conclusion? And I don't think too many people, especially those of us who believe, can answer that. Not honestly, anyway. How'd you figure that?
Well, maybe
and we don't think about that.
Maybe the non-believers are coming at you hard.
That's possible, and that's free will. It's great,
So,
but but again, what is faith if it's not tested?
Well, that just give you more. That can give you more conviction.
Absolutely.
That you are on the right trail for yourself.
Yeah.
You see light at the tunnel.
This reminds me of moments where I've seen highly influential figures just get bashed, and people are saying things that are completely untrue, and maybe some of it's partly true, but people are just going crazy. And then the person says, and I've seen this happen multiple times, they say, this is why free speech is a good thing, or something along the lines of that. And I always love when I get to see things like that, because if you don't have the opportunities, if you don't have the opportunity to do something bad, then doing good doesn't actually matter. And so that's why I find it to be something that I'm actually glad for when I get to see moments like that happen to me, at least, because it's just showing that this free speech actually is real and it does exist.
No doubt.
How about for you, Dan? How are you making the most technology we have available? What comes to mind when you see what Nigel wrote there?
I make it. I make the most out of it by using it. Right. I know that may seem like the most simplest answer, but yeah, I'm making the most of it by using it. And I've always been a proponent of not just one. So specifically, it's AI. That's what everyone's doing, using, and seeming to be. Where, man, I can just imagine how many people are using AI right now as we're talking. It's the go-to everything for everyone, everywhere right now. So, truth is the truth in there. That's our job to find that out. Using it more, I want to be comfortable before I try to use more, because personally for me, I convolute myself. If I'm not comfortable before I try and continue on, then I have a hard time. Or maybe I'm ADHD or dyslexic in trying to compartmentalize it. But technology is a different world today than it has been in just the past few years. I think the COVID was the giant turning point. That's what forced me into technology specifically, but I think that was just such a giant shift of something that happened that made technology become part of our everyday life. It wasn't. It's no longer just something that we literally pick up and use at will. It's in everything that we're doing. The tech that's being created today is in everything that we're touching, everywhere we're going. Just your electric vehicles. Can't believe how many charging stations there are out there. It
Yeah.
seems like I'm almost looking at as many charging stations as I'm seeing gas stations. It's getting close. It is. It's getting close to.
Not only here in the Bay Area.
Well,
I mean, we have a skewed view of our nation. It's going to be
That's
very,
true.
very difficult for our
That's-
nation to build the infrastructure to go beyond high saturation places like the Bay Area to nationwide for electric cars. Electric cars have a serious uphill battle to go beyond the 10-15% market penetration they have currently.
it'll
It's
get
going to be
there.
extremely difficult. It's
It'll
going to be a
get there.
challenge. I mean, just the
One way or
batteries,
another.
the
They're
raw
making it.
materials to make the batteries. I don't know if it's going to get there. I don't know if the electric and the time frame of when will it be? As much as I want to see, here's how I took advantage of the technology. I don't have a beautiful self-driving Tesla. I have a hybrid Prius. Sorry. Okay, I know that's not manly, but
How do you fit in something so small?
I go fill it up at the gas station. That's how the money I save motivates me to fit in. It's actually the Prius is actually not as uncomfortable as I don't fit in anything. Okay, I don't fit any better in my van than I do inside my Prius. Okay, so it's kind of a moot point.
You're fitting your
But
screen pretty good.
I took advantage because we self-drove Friday. We had to go up to Sacramento, and my friend had a self-driving Tesla. So we chose to carpool in her car, and Teo and I and her drove up to, 4 hours up and 2.5 hours back.
It's pretty impressive.
To Sacramento. But that was wonderful. But as I was saying, as much as I want the future to be electric cars that are all self-driving and driving's a thing of the past and traffic is greatly solved when the cars are all talking to each other and linked together and then they're on the freeway, they're the equivalent of a train nearly, whether they link together physically or they're just connected because they're talking to each other and braking simultaneously, and traffic accidents go dramatically drop and commute times are dramatically cut. As much as I want that to be the future, there are huge challenges for that. And now with deglobalization, we have to rebuild all that infrastructure to build it. We have to increase our electrical capacity for AI. Just for AI, we need to increase our national electric of the grid, the capacity by 150%. That's significant, and that's not going to happen in 1 year, 2 years. That's not even going to happen in 5 years. That's a decade. Just if everything lines up. So electric cars taking over and replacing the internal combustion engine, that's not 10 years out. That's not 20 years out. 30, who knows, maybe.
I wouldn't say that. You were saying a lot about the resources and the materials themselves, and that is probably the biggest problem. It's really difficult right now to get lithium or whatever people use. But I've recently seen plenty of things that make that seem like it's going from 20 to 30 years to a lot closer. I mean, just here in California, they actually recently found a massive lithium reserve under one of the big lakes that we have here, which is huge. That completely affects everything because that's the biggest one, I think, in all of North America. It might even be the Americas as a whole. So that alone is huge. Then additionally,
I hadn't heard about that. Lithium found in California.
Then additionally, they're coming up with a bunch of different types of batteries that you can use. It's not only the lithium ion that you have to use. There's other ones that people are creating. Like there was a sodium one, and there's also types that they're mixing. So they're kind of making a hybrid, but for electric vehicles, where it's partly sodium, partly lithium, and partly the other one, which is another interesting idea. And it just shows that when you have something that people really want to push for, people will innovate, because innovation comes after necessity.
How about for you? How are you making the most technology that we have available?
Just like what Danny said, by using it,
Hmm.
taking advantage of it. But of course, we have to um, uh, make sure that it's like useful to us. Although, us like games, it's actually useful to us. Well, take advantage of it. That's what I do. Although I'm not really into like really into technology, because um, I don't know. I just love to enjoy the place where I am right
Yeah.
now.
The world is still so amazing, even though there's the second world that we now have.
Yeah, my answer to
Go ahead, Ted.
I was going to say my answer to how am I taking advantage of the technology we have is similar to Riza's. The fact I've seen that I leverage technology the best. I don't feel like I don't resonate or feel called to be one of those guys that just loves technology and is exploring the latest and greatest thing. And I found that
it was like a tech hugger, like a tree hugger, but for tech. I'm surprised to hear you say that.
Tech?
No,
Tech?
I'm not a tech hugger. I mean, maybe I am more than I want to be, but if I align with my goal and my clear goal, like, we're pushing into technology that is going to empower people to not be in front of thumbs on a screen. Okay.
I want to ask, what would the TED Talk be about?
The TED Talk would be about
why men should wear helmets and their friends short ceiling.
Why tall men should wear helmets, and why building codes are discriminatory against tall people. Like it's this whole systemic conspiracy against people who are tall. Like theoretically your apartment was built according to code, but it's so dangerous for people my height. And it's like, I want to wear. But no, like, here's one way I'm getting into technology. Okay. By actually doing the opposite. I want to be fit more. So I'm leveraging technology like podcasts and all this information age to learn more about fitness and health than I ever have before. Okay. And then I'm adopting technologies that aren't necessarily new, but some of them are new, like EMS. Of course, I bought the electric muscle stimulation thing, and then my wife steals it and uses it all the time, which is super cool. And I learned from her. Now we've got this technology thing of massage. I think you have one of those, and these are common. We don't think of them as technology, but boy, now you don't need to go pay what is it? $60, $100 to a masseuse. You can get that machine that hits your muscle. Bop, 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 bop. Those that's technology. Yeah. That helps you loosen up your muscles. The scientific developments of how to train. And a lot of that is full circle, because it's showing you all the tremendous benefits you need without a gym, just body weight, things you can do, but it's the information revolution that gives us access to that. Certainly access in a way I never, ever had when I was in high school. When I was in college, it was pre-email. Email was just coming out, but we didn't have it yet.
I didn't. It was even during my college time.
It was the transition from typing papers and whiteout. Whiteout was a technology. And then when they got white strips, so you didn't have to paint it, it was a strip and it was a lot cleaner.
You paint
that
the whiteout
was an innovation. And then word processors. That was a huge innovation. Now you can go back and change your document without having to retype it.
So,
That
Ted,
was amazing.
I'm going to bring us to a close. We're almost at the top of the hour. I do want to mention this about the influence of technology. I think in history, as this history looks back upon this week, I think people will look back at this moment, this specific week, and maybe the specific month as the moment when the two Charlies changed the mindset of many people. So one is, I think that Charlie Kirk's death, which technology obviously gave him a platform of influence, gave him a platform that was so powerful that people like Gavin Newsom had him on the first podcast. Bill Maher had him on his podcast recently. A lot of things are said about Charlie, but if you look at his body of work, he was a great conversationalist that advocated for nonviolence and advocated for people being able to have dialogue. Dan even mentioned how when he would talk in a microphone, he'd talk, and then when he said what he had to say or asked what he had to ask, he would put the microphone down on a chair away from him.
I appreciate that.
Very
There was something just unique about that. Not only that, I don't know anyone else who would do that. Maybe they would, lean in and talk and then lean back out of the microphone or something like that. But
Right.
to physically put that down, I also felt like it actually gave whoever was coming up to debate him, because, he did raise a lot of eyebrows in his whole platform is a debatable thing. Come and prove me wrong. Let's talk about not things that we coalesce with.
Right.
Let's talk about you think of it one way, I think of it another way. And but just the idea that he would set that microphone down made me, when I saw that, it really impacted me, made me feel that there's an area of grace there, that he was not just giving the other person the platform and the time, but literally by putting that mic down, really lets the other side know, or the other person know, it's all you. Have at it, whatever you got to say. So and then if I think about the other way, like if someone had the mic in their hand, it really lets someone not finish what their statement is. It's
Right.
real easy to interject and come into. So I just found that was just a brilliant way of delivery. I thought that was very unique and very just very smart.
The other Charlie is Charlie Sheen. Many of you have likely seen, he has a 2-part Netflix series. It's been said by someone I trust to the max on this stuff. If you love Charlie, only watch the first part.
Yeah.
Don't watch part 2 if you love Charlie. His book came out the same exact time. He's on a tour. The person that told me that was Dan, and so I only watched part 1. While he's now touring on podcasts and whatnot to promote the book, he did 15 minutes on Bill Maher on Friday, did an hour on Megyn Kelly on Sunday, did 3 hours with Joe Rogan live when everything happened with Charlie Kirk. And if I had to summarize my perspective of Charlie Sheen's impact on our nation, it is
Crazy.
He is giving a very strong reality check that the maxed out pleasure, it leads to just seeking more of it. And ultimately, he's had to find himself restraining himself from the access to women and drugs and fame. Purposefully, he's been sober for 8 years because he's not found that to be fulfilling, but rather to be something that had driven, a lot of pain and a wedge between him and those that love him and family and whatnot, and also his career. And so I think there is going to be the story of the two Charlies as you look back on this week and this month. One giving, what's happened around Charlie Kirk, and
Noble
the other,
Savage. That's
Very
you
Noble
got
Savage.
the two Charlies, then the Noble
Very Noble
Savage going on in full effect going
Very
on
Noble
right there.
Savage.
Right?
So we might touch base on that a bit more tomorrow. We might talk more about how technology amplifies us or can, and how that impacts our society. We're going to wrap it up for now and say thank you for all of us that have joined us. We'll be back again tomorrow at the same time. May all of you be at peace and grace. Be
Happy
well.
Monday.
Thank you for
Happy
your
Monday,
attention.
everybody.
Yeah, right.